The lights in the Luna Command Center dimmed as the massive holographic display activated. Admiral Kang Minho stood at attention, his weathered face showing no emotion as 12 alien figures materialized before him. Each creature was different and terrifying in its own way. The largest being was made of living crystal, its body reflecting the station's lights in strange patterns. Next to it floated a creature that looked like a giant jellyfish, its tentacles moving through the air as if it were swimming. Another being appeared to be made of pure energy, shifting and crackling with power. Humans of Earth. The crystal being spoke, its voice echoing strangely in the chamber. I am High Chancellor Vorthek of the Galactic Council. We have watched your species for 50 of your years. We have seen enough. Minho kept his hands behind his back, fighting the urge to reach for his sidearm. Around him, his staff stood equally, still, but he could feel their tension. Your species has spread to 47 star systems, the energy being continued. You build weapons instead of art. You fight instead of submitting to natural order. This chaos ends now. The jellyfish creature pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. The Council has decided Earth and all human colonies will surrender within 72 standard hours. You will dismantle all military installations. You will give us your faster-than-light technology. Your species will undergo genetic modification to remove aggressive tendencies. Minho's jaw tightened. Around the room, his officers exchanged glances. Lieutenant Commander Park Subin, the station's chief science officer, was recording everything with her scanner. If you comply, the crystal being said, your species will be relocated to designated worlds where you can live peacefully under Council guidance. You will serve useful purposes in our galaxy. And if we refuse? Minho asked, his voice steady, the energy being crackled brighter. Then Earth and every human world will be sterilized. Your species will become extinct. We have done this before, with other stubborn races. The hologram flickered and changed, showing images of dead worlds, burned cities, empty space where planets once orbited their suns. Minho counted at least 12 different civilizations that had been completely destroyed. You have 72 hours, the jellyfish creature said. Send your answer on all frequencies. The galaxy will witness your wisdom or your extinction. The hologram vanished, leaving the command center in sudden silence. Minho turned to his staff. Get me a secure line to Earth Command. Alert all fleet commanders. And someone find Captain Lee Dong-yun. I need the Indomitable back here immediately. While his officers rushed to their stations, Minho walked to the observation deck. Through the transparent aluminum, he could see Earth hanging in space like a blue marble. Somewhere down there, 8 billion people were going about their daily lives, unaware that they had just been given 3 days to choose between slavery and death. Dr. Park Subin joined him at the window. She was young for her rank, but her expertise in alien biology had earned her a place on his senior staff. Admiral, she said quietly, I've been analyzing the transmission. There's hidden data embedded in their communication protocols. What kind of data? Genetic profiles, psychological assessments. They've been studying not just our technology, but our minds. She paused, looking at her data pad. Sir, they're afraid of something specific about us. Afraid? They just threatened to destroy our entire species. Yes, but look at these patterns. She showed him the screen. Every other species they've conquered showed similar neural responses when faced with overwhelming odds, immediate submission, acceptance of defeat. We don't have those patterns. Minho studied the data. What does that mean? It means we're different, sir. When other species see impossible odds, they surrender. When humans see impossible odds, we start planning how to win anyway. A communication alert sounded. Minho returned to the command center as Captain Lee Dong-hyun's face appeared on the main screen. Dong-hyun was young for a ship captain, but he had proven himself in several skirmishes with pirates and raiders. "Admiral, we're detecting massive fleet movements on the edge of human space," Dong-hyun reported. "Ships unlike anything we've ever seen. Some of them are the size of small moons." "How many ships, Captain?" "Thousands, sir. Maybe tens of thousands. They're taking positions around every human system simultaneously." Minho nodded grimly. "Return to Luna immediately, Captain. We have a situation." Over the next few hours, reports flooded in from across human space. The alien fleets were massive beyond imagination. Each ship was a technological marvel that made humanity's best warships look like children's toys. President Kim Ji-yo's face appeared on every screen as she addressed the United Nations emergency session. Her voice was calm but firm as she spoke to the representatives of Earth's nations. "Citizens of Earth and the colonies," she began, "we have received an ultimatum from an alien force calling itself the Galactic Council. They demand our complete surrender and the subjugation of our species." The camera showed the shocked faces of world leaders as she continued. "They offer us a choice between slavery and extinction. They believe these are our only options." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "They are wrong." General Yoon Tae-hyung stood behind her, his expression hard as stone. He had fought in the colonial wars and knew what real warfare looked like. "We have 72 hours to give our answer," the president continued. "But humanity's answer was decided long before these aliens arrived. We will not kneel. We will not surrender. If they want Earth, they will have to take it from our cold, dead hands." Back on Luna Station, Minho gathered his senior staff in the war room. The holographic display showed the positions of human fleets compared to the alien forces. The odds were sobering. "How many ships do we have total?" Minho asked. "Across all systems, about 800 combat vessels," reported Commander Song Hyejin from Intelligence. "They have at least 10,000 that we can detect." "What about our defensive platforms? Orbital defense stations around major worlds, asteroid mining facilities that could be weaponized, and about 200,000 automated defense drones scattered across human space." Dr. Park Subin looked up from her analysis. "Admiral, I've identified the species in the Council. The Vorthak are the crystal beings. They're the dominant race. The Nalthara are the jellyfish creatures. They control biotechnology. The Kethivar are pure energy. They handle information warfare. Weaknesses? Unknown. But, sir, there's something else. In all their historical records of conquered species, they always gave the same ultimatum. Every species surrendered within hours. We're the first to even consider fighting back." Captain Lee Dong-hyun had arrived and was studying the tactical displays. "Admiral, conventional warfare is suicide, but maybe that's not what we need." "Explain." "They expect us to fight like civilized beings. Naval battles, proper formations, rules of engagement. What if we don't?" Minho raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting we fight dirty." "I'm suggesting we fight like humans, sir. Like our ancestors who drove off predators with sticks and stones." Engineer Oh Ji-won, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "The captain's right. They have better technology, but they think in patterns. Every conquered species fought the same way and lost the same way. If we're unpredictable, we might survive. Long enough to find their weak points," Minho finished. As the countdown to humanity's deadline continued, something remarkable happened. Instead of panic, a strange calm settled over human space. People went to work, children went to school, and families gathered for dinner. But in weapons factories, production ran around the clock. In military academies, retired officers returned to duty. In research labs, scientists worked frantically to turn every piece of technology into a potential weapon. Humanity was preparing for war with the methodical thoroughness that had carried them from the caves to the stars. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing technology they barely understood. And for the first time in galactic history, nobody was surrendering. The Galactic Council expected many things from humanity. Panic, desperate pleas for mercy, perhaps attempts at negotiation or bargaining for more time. What they did not expect was laughter. Admiral Kang Minho stood before the transmission array, on Luna Station, surrounded by his staff and delegates from Earth. Behind him, Captain Lee Dong-hyun and General Yoon Tae-hyung waited in full-dress uniform. Dr. Park Subin monitored the communication channels, ensuring their message would reach every corner of the galaxy. "Open all frequencies," Minho ordered. "Maximum power. I want every ship, every station, every listening post in the galaxy to hear this." The communication officer nodded. "All channels open, Admiral. You're broadcasting to the entire galaxy." Minho stepped forward, his weathered face calm and confident. "This is Admiral Kang Minho of the United Earth Defense Force, speaking for all of humanity. We have received the Galactic Council's generous offer." He paused, letting the words hang in space. "We decline." The simple statement echoed across star systems, reaching alien ears that had never heard such a response before. "You offer us the choice between slavery and death," Minho continued. "We choose neither. If you want Earth, if you want our colonies, if you want our people to kneel before you, then come and take them. We'll be waiting." Dr. Park Subin watched her instruments as the transmission spread throughout the galaxy. Already she could detect response signals from alien ships, confused chatter in dozens of languages as the Council's forces tried to process what they had just heard. "For 50,000 years, Minho said, your council has ruled this galaxy through fear. Species after species has knelt before you, accepting slavery rather than fighting for freedom. Today, that ends." General Yoon Tae-hyung stepped forward. "We are human. We do not kneel, we do not surrender, and we do not go quietly into the dark." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in silence. Within minutes, communication requests flooded in from across human space. Colony governors, fleet commanders, and civilian leaders all wanted to know the same thing. "What now, President?" Kim Ji-hyo addressed the question in her emergency broadcast to Earth. "The aliens think we will break under pressure. They think fear will make us weak. They have studied every species they've conquered, and they all responded the same way to overwhelming odds, immediate submission." She looked directly into the camera. "They don't understand humans. When we face impossible odds, we don't surrender. We get creative." On the outer rim of human space, Captain Lee Dong-hyun received new orders aboard his ship, the Indomitable. The message was simple. Probe enemy defenses, learn everything, survive if possible. Dong-hyun gathered his crew in the ship's main briefing room. The Indomitable was humanity's newest warship, but compared to the alien vessels surrounding them, it might as well have been made of paper. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dong-hyun began, "Command wants us to poke the bear. We're going to attack one of their monitoring stations." His weapons officer, Lieutenant Bae Sung-min, looked up from his tactical display. "Sir, that's suicide. Those stations are protected by ships 10 times our size. Probably, Dong-Yun agreed. But Command isn't asking us to win. They're asking us to learn. How do they fight? How do they react? What are their weaknesses? Chief. Engineer Oji-Wan raised her hand. Captain, what if we don't fight like they expect? What do you mean? Every report says they use long-range energy weapons and defensive shields. Classical space warfare. What if we get up close and personal? Dong-Yun smiled. You mean ramming speed? I mean we turn every part of this ship into a weapon. Ram them, board them, blow up our own reactor if we have to. Show them that humans fight differently. Back on Luna Station, Commander Song Hyejin was analyzing intelligence reports from across the galaxy. What she found disturbed and fascinated her in equal measure. Admiral, she reported to Minho, I've been studying the Council's historical records. Every species they've conquered followed the same pattern when faced with their ultimatum. What pattern? First, disbelief, then panic, then desperate attempts at negotiation. Finally, complete surrender within 12 to 18 hours of the initial ultimatum. Minho frowned. Every species. All 47 of them. The longest any species held out was 22 hours, and that was only because their communication systems were damaged. Dr. Park Subin looked up from her xenobiological analysis. That's not natural, Admiral. No species should be that uniform in their response to existential threats. What are you thinking, Doctor? I think the Council has been shaping galactic evolution for millennia. They haven't just been conquering species randomly. They've been selecting for psychological traits that make conquest easier. She brought up a holographic display showing genetic and psychological data. Look at these patterns. Every conquered species shows similar neural pathways related to hierarchy and submission. When faced with clearly superior force, their brains literally shut down resistance instincts. And humans? We're completely different. Our brains respond to overwhelming odds by increasing activity in the areas responsible for problem-solving and aggression. Where they see hopeless defeat, we see an interesting challenge. The first test of human resolve came 18 hours after their refusal. Captain Lee Dong-Yun's ship, the Indomitable, approached a Council monitoring station on the edge of human space. The station was massive, a crystalline structure the size of a small city floating in the void. Energy readings showed defensive capabilities that could destroy a dozen human ships. All stop, Dong-Yun ordered. Power down everything except life support and engines. Sir? His navigation officer asked. If we're going to surprise them, we need to look harmless first. The alien station responded exactly as expected, sending a communication demanding immediate surrender. Dong-Yun ignored it, instead studying the station's structure through passive sensors. There, he pointed to the tactical display. See that energy pattern? Their shields project outward. Nothing's protecting them from underneath. Captain, Engineer Oji-Wan said over the comm, I've rigged our entire missile magazine to blow if we take critical damage. If we ram them and detonate, do it. The Indomitable suddenly accelerated, diving toward the station's unprotected underside. The aliens responded with devastating energy beams that tore through the ship's armor, but Dong-Yun kept pushing forward. Ramming. Speed! He shouted as his ship smashed into the station's crystal hull. The explosion lit up the entire star system. When the energy cleared, both the Indomitable and the monitoring station were gone. But the sensor data had been transmitted to human command before the ship's destruction. Dr. Park Subin analyzed the battle data with growing excitement. Admiral, look at this. The aliens didn't just respond slowly to Captain Lee's tactics. They responded incorrectly. How so? When he started his ramming run, they tried to destroy his ship with precision shots, but they never thought to simply move out of the way. Their tactical programming apparently doesn't include what to do when the enemy intentionally destroys themselves to hurt you. General Yoon Tae-hyung studied the data with professional interest. Their mistake was thinking this was unusual behavior for humans. In our history, suicide attacks are rare but not unknown. We've done it before when facing impossible odds. The question is, Minho said, can we use this? The answer came from an unexpected source. President Kim Ji-hyo received a secure transmission from the ruins of the monitoring station. Captain Lee Dong-yun was alive, along with most of his crew. They had escaped in hidden pods before the collision. Mr. President, Dong-yun reported, we learned something important. They have better technology, but they think in patterns. When we do something that doesn't fit their patterns, they can't adapt quickly enough. Within hours, the news spread. Throughout human space, the impossible had happened. A human ship had destroyed an alien facility and survived. More importantly, they had learned how to hurt the Council. Engineer Oh Ji-won, rescued along with the rest of the crew, was already working on new ship designs based on what they had learned. We can't match their firepower, she explained to, the design team. But we can build ships they won't know how to fight. As word of the victory spread, something remarkable happened throughout human space. Morale didn't just improve, it skyrocketed. Factory workers volunteered for overtime shifts. Retired military officers returned to duty. Civilian engineers began designing weapons in their spare time. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as these primitive beings not only refused to surrender, but actively fought back against impossible odds. For the first time in 50,000 years, the Galactic Council faced an enemy that became more dangerous when cornered. And in the depths of space, more human ships began moving toward alien positions, each one carrying crews who had learned that sometimes the best way to win an impossible fight is to make sure the enemy pays as much as possible for their victory. The Council's invasion began with overwhelming force, just as their military doctrine demanded. Massive fleets emerged from hyperspace around every human world simultaneously, their weapons charged and shields raised for the quick victory their models predicted. They encountered something that broke 40,000 years of military science. Major Bae Sung-min crouched in the ruins of New Seoul, the capital city of Kepler 442b. Above him, Council ships rained energy beams that turned skyscrapers into glass and steel. Around him, his special operations team prepared for a mission that violated every rule of conventional warfare. Remember, he whispered into his comm unit, when they cut off our supply lines, we don't retreat. We get creative. His team members nodded, their faces blackened with soot from the burning city. Each soldier carried a backpack full of improvised explosives made from mining equipment and kitchen chemicals. Their weapons were a mix of military rifles and hunting tools that any civilian could buy. The aliens had studied human military technology for decades. They knew about plasma rifles, guided missiles, and orbital defense platforms. They had not prepared for humans who built bombs from fertilizer and wire. Engineer Oh Ji-won worked frantically in an underground bunker beneath the ruins of Luna Station. Around her, automated systems continued manufacturing weapons even as Council. Forces bombed the surface installations above. Status report. Admiral Kang Minho's voice crackled through the damaged communication system. Phoenix Protocol is active, Admiral, Oh replied, wiping sweat from her forehead. Every major facility in human space is now rigged to explode if they try to capture it intact. She pulled up a holographic display showing the trap network she had spent months preparing. Asteroid mining stations loaded with nuclear charges. Artificial gravity generators that could create black holes. Orbital platforms disguised as debris fields. The beauty of it, she continued, is that they can't tell which installations are traps and which are legitimate targets. Every time they approach a human facility, they have to assume it might explode. The psychological effect on Council forces was immediate and devastating. Species that had conquered the galaxy through overwhelming technological superiority suddenly faced an enemy that turned their own advantages against them. Dr. Park. Subin monitored alien communications from a hidden facility deep in Earth's ocean. The translations were troubling for the Council and encouraging for humanity. "Listen to this," she told her team, playing an intercepted transmission between Council commanders. Translation: Human defensive position detected. Recommend long-range bombardment. Negative. Previous bombardment triggered fusion detonation. Approach with caution. She switched to another channel. This one's even better. Human facility appears abandoned. Confirmed abandoned? Negative. Could be trap. Humans have been observed living in radiation zones and toxic environments. Standard sensors ineffective. The truth was simpler and more terrifying than the aliens realized. Humans didn't just survive in hostile environments, they thrived in them. When Council forces cut off life support to orbital stations, humans found ways to generate oxygen from rock. When they poisoned water supplies, humans built filtration systems from scrap metal. Captain Lee Dong-yun, now commanding a new ship, built in secret shipyards, pioneered what military historians would later call ghost ship tactics. His vessel, the Defiant, looked like a broken hulk drifting through space. Its hull was scarred, its energy signature minimal, and its course appeared random. "Contact bearing 047, reported his sensor officer, Lieutenant Shin Yuna. "Council patrol ship, moving to investigate the debris field." "Perfect," Dong-yun smiled. "Wait until they're in close range, then show them what a ghost ship can do." The Defiant suddenly blazed to life, its hidden weapons systems emerging from concealed compartments. The alien patrol ship, expecting to investigate harmless wreckage, instead found itself facing a fully armed warship at point-blank range. The engagement lasted less than 30 seconds. The Council ship was destroyed, and the Defiant returned to playing dead, waiting for the next victim. "Sir," Shin Yuna reported, "that's the 5th patrol ship this week. They're starting to avoid debris fields entirely." "Good," Dong-yun replied. "That means they can't salvage our equipment or rescue their own survivors. Every destroyed ship becomes a potential trap." The psychological warfare campaign was coordinated by Commander Song Hyejin from a mobile command center that moved through the asteroid belt. Her intelligence division had discovered something crucial about the Council's military psychology. "Admiral," she reported to Minho via encrypted transmission, "we've identified a critical weakness. Council species have been at peace so long, they've lost the ability to adapt to chaotic warfare." She displayed charts showing alien response patterns. "When we follow their expected tactics, they counter us perfectly. But when we do something unexpected, their response time increases dramatically. They have to consult tactical databases and get approval from higher command." "How long does that take?" "Between 30 seconds and 5 minutes, depending on how unusual our action is. In space combat, that's an eternity." Major Bae Sung-min discovered this weakness firsthand during the Battle of New Seoul. His team had been cornered in a subway tunnel by Council ground forces, massive armored units that could vaporize human soldiers with single shots. Instead of fighting or retreating, Bay did something the aliens had never encountered. He surrendered, then immediately attacked while their guard was down. "Human commander, you have yielded," the alien officer said through its translator. "You will be processed for integration." "Actually," Bay replied, pulling the pin from a grenade, "I changed my mind." The explosion collapsed part of the tunnel, trapping the alien force underground. By the time Council reinforcements arrived, Bay's team had escaped through maintenance passages that the aliens didn't know existed. The incident was recorded and analyzed by Dr. Park Subin's team. "Look at this behavioral pattern," she explained to Admiral Minho. "They accepted his surrender because their programming says defeated enemies surrender. They didn't consider that humans might surrender tactically." Fake surrender as a weapon? Exactly. Their entire social structure is based on dominance and submission. When someone submits, they automatically lower their guard because submission means the threat is over. Engineer OG-1 took this concept and weaponized it on a massive scale. Throughout human space, automated systems began broadcasting surrender signals to approaching Council fleets. When the aliens moved in to secure their victories, they found entire installations rigged to explode. The Titan mining platform incident became legendary among human forces. A massive asteroid mining facility sent a surrender signal when Council ships approached. The aliens landed troops and began processing what they thought was a captured facility. Instead, they found themselves inside a carefully constructed trap. The entire asteroid had been hollowed out and filled with nuclear charges. When it detonated, the explosion was visible from 3 star systems away. "The psychological impact," reported Commander Song Hyejin, "is spreading beyond their military forces. We're intercepting civilian communications, showing widespread fear among Council populations." She played translated messages. "The humans fight like demons. They turn everything into a weapon. How do you defeat an enemy that considers death a tactical option? They don't follow any civilized rules of warfare." Admiral Minho studied the reports with grim satisfaction. "They're learning what humans have always known. There are no rules in a fight for survival." The campaign reached its peak during the defense of Earth. Council forces approached the homeworld expecting the heaviest resistance, but also the most predictable tactics. Instead, they found a planet that had transformed itself into a weapons system. Cities had been evacuated and replaced with automated defense networks. Orbital platforms looked damaged, but were actually concealed weapon emplacements. The Moon itself had been turned into a massive railgun, its surface covered with magnetic accelerators. But the real surprise came from Earth's population. Instead of hiding in bunkers, civilians had organized into guerrilla networks. Factory workers had memorized instructions for building bombs from household items. School teachers led evacuation operations that doubled as intelligence-gathering missions. Dr. Park Subin coordinated the civilian resistance from the deep ocean facility. "The Council expects military targets," she explained to her coordinators. "They don't know how to handle an entire population that's been weaponized." When Council forces landed in major cities, they found empty streets and abandoned buildings. But every doorway might hide a sniper. Every abandoned car might be rigged to explode. Every civilian who approached with hands raised might be carrying enough explosives to level a city block. The aliens had conquered 47 civilizations using the same basic strategy: overwhelming force followed by quick submission. For the first time in galactic history, they faced a species that treated overwhelming force as a starting point for creativity. Captain Lee Dong-yun received new orders as his ghost ship drifted near Jupiter. All units, implement Operation Prometheus. It's time to take the Council's patience broke like glass against steel. Earth burned under orbital bombardment as massive alien ships unleashed weapons that boiled oceans and cracked continents. The beautiful blue world that humanity called home became a hellscape of fire and radiation. But in the deep tunnels beneath the ruins of Seoul, Colonel Nam Jong-guk and 10,000 survivors dug deeper and fought harder. "Status report," Jong-guk called into his headset as another tremor shook the underground complex. Dust fell from the ceiling and the emergency lights flickered. "Sectors 7 through 12 are sealed," reported Major Yu Hana from the eastern tunnels. "We lost contact with the surface facilities, but the deep networks are holding." Jong-guk studied the maps spread across his makeshift command table. The tunnel system stretched across 3 continents, connected by maglev trains that had been converted into supply lines. Above them, the surface world was uninhabitable. Below them, humanity had built a second civilization. Any word from the other cities? New Tokyo network is operational. European Central reports heavy damage but functioning. The Australian complex? She paused, checking her readings. "We lost contact 6 hours ago. That meant 50,000 people, gone in a single council attack." Jong-guk felt the weight of each death, but he couldn't afford to stop. The survivors depended on him to keep fighting. Dr. Park Subin worked in laboratories that had never seen sunlight, carved from solid rock beneath the Pacific Ocean. Her xenopsychology research had taken a dark turn as she studied captured council soldiers. "Dr. Choi Min-sok," she called to her research partner, "come look at this brain scan." Choi hurried over, his face pale in the artificial light. He had been studying alien psychology for months, trying to understand how the council maintained control over so many species. "The Vorthax soldier we captured," Subin continued, pointing to the holographic display of neural pathways. "Look at these sections here. The areas responsible for independent thinking, creativity, problem-solving. They're severely underdeveloped." "Deliberately?" Choi asked. "That's what's terrifying. This isn't natural evolution. Someone or something has been breeding these traits out of council species for thousands of generations." She switched to another display showing comparative brain scans. Every council species shows the same pattern. They've been genetically and culturally programmed to be perfect soldiers and administrators, but they've lost the ability to adapt to unexpected situations. And humans? We're chaos incarnate compared to them. Our brains are wired for creativity, aggression, and individual problem-solving. When they see impossible odds, their programming tells them to submit to superior authority. When we see impossible odds, we get angry and start breaking things. Choi finished. The conversation was interrupted by alarms echoing through the facility. On the main screen, they watched council ships attacking a refugee convoy trying to escape the burning Australian continent. The ships were full of children, elderly civilians, and wounded soldiers. They had no weapons, no shields, and no chance of fighting back. The council destroyed them anyway, vaporizing each transport with surgical precision. Subin watched the slaughter with growing horror and rage. "They're not trying to win anymore," she whispered. "They're trying to break us." The council had indeed changed tactics. High Chancellor Vorthek, frustrated by months of unexpected resistance, had authorized what the aliens called psychological warfare and humans called war crimes. Colony ships full of civilians were hunted down and destroyed. Captured human soldiers were executed on live broadcasts. Agricultural worlds were poisoned, leaving entire populations to starve. The message was clear: surrender now, or watch your species die slowly. Instead of breaking human spirit, these atrocities triggered something the Council had never encountered in 40,000 years of conquest. They awakened humanity's capacity for vengeance. Lieutenant Commander Shin Yuna received her new orders aboard the stealth ship Silent Thunder. The mission parameters were unlike anything in Earth's military history. "Ma'am," her weapons officer asked, "these targets are civilian installations. Are you sure about these orders?" Yuna looked at the tactical display, showing Council civilian populations on their home worlds. Crystalline cities full of non-combatants, underwater settlements where alien children played in bioluminescent gardens, energy beings who had never known war. "They killed our children first," she replied quietly. "Admiral Minho's orders are clear. Make them understand what they started." The Silent Thunder penetrated deep into Council space, using captured alien technology and stealth systems that made it invisible to their sensors. Yuna's crew was volunteers only, each one having lost family members to Council atrocities. "Target acquired," reported the navigation officer. "Vorthak civilian mining colony, population 2 million. "Weapons hot," Yuna ordered. "Fire when ready." The nuclear torpedo struck the mining facility with devastating precision. In seconds, 2 million alien civilians who had never fired a shot at humanity were vaporized. The explosion was visible from orbit, a brilliant flash that announced humanity's entry into total war. Similar attacks struck Council civilian targets across a dozen systems. For the first time in galactic history, the Council's own populations experienced the terror they had inflicted on others. The psychological impact was immediate and catastrophic. Council species, bred for submission and unused to personal danger, panicked on a scale that their leaders had never imagined possible. Dr. Choi Min-seok analyzed the intercepted communications with growing understanding. "Admiral," he reported, to Minho via encrypted transmission, "their civilian populations are in complete psychological collapse." Explain. "They've been protected from warfare for so long that they've lost all capacity to deal with it. When humans face mortal danger, we respond with increased aggression and determination. When Council species face the same danger, they become completely paralyzed." The reports were disturbing even to hardened military officers. Entire Council cities had shut down as their populations refused to leave their homes. Alien children suffered psychological breaks that their medical systems couldn't treat. Some species were demanding immediate withdrawal from human space. "Sir," Choi continued, "I think we've found their critical weakness. They can dish out atrocities, but they can't take them." Admiral Minho studied the intelligence reports with mixed feelings. The human strikes had been devastatingly effective, but at a cost that troubled him deeply. Humanity was winning through tactics that would have horrified them before the war began. General Yoon Tae-hyung brought him the latest strategic assessment. "Admiral, the Council's military effectiveness is dropping rapidly. Their supply lines are breaking down as civilian populations refuse to support the war effort. And our casualties? Severe. We've lost 60% of our original military forces and about 4 billion civilians. But our remaining forces are more effective than ever." That was the terrible mathematics of total war. Each side was learning to inflict maximum damage, while their own populations grew harder and more ruthless. Engineer Ojiwan presented the final option from her laboratory deep beneath the ruins of Luna Station. Admiral, I've completed work. On the Prometheus device, the holographic display showed a weapon unlike anything in human history. It was built from captured Council technology and human creativity, a perfect fusion of alien science and human ruthlessness. What does it do? Minho asked. It's a self-replicating nanotechnology system. Once deployed, it consumes all organic and synthetic matter to create more copies of itself. Conservative estimates suggest it could consume a star system in 6 months. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. And stopping it? There is no stopping it once deployed. It's designed to continue until it runs out of matter to consume. Minho stared at the weapon specifications. Humanity had created the ultimate doomsday device, something that could literally consume the galaxy if deployed incorrectly. How many can we build? We already have 12 units ready for deployment. If the Council continues their current tactics, we can have them positioned around their major systems within weeks. The message to the Council was simple and terrifying. Humanity had built weapons that could destroy not just civilizations, but entire regions of space. If the human species was going to die, they would take as much of the galaxy with them as possible. President Kim Ji-yo authorized the deployment with a heavy heart. Broadcast this message on all Council frequencies, she ordered. Tell them exactly what we've built and exactly what we'll do with it. The transmission was brief and devastating. To the Galactic Council, you have taught us that civilization is a luxury we cannot afford. We have learned your lessons well. Our new weapons are now in position around your most important systems. If Earth falls silent, they activate automatically. If our species dies, yours dies with us. Choose wisely. For the first time in 40,000 years, the Galactic Council faced an enemy that was willing to destroy everything rather than surrender. They had created their own nightmare by teaching humanity that mercy was weakness and survival required absolute ruthlessness. The galaxy held its breath as both sides prepared for a final confrontation that could end all life in known space. The message came through channels so secret that Dr. Park Subin almost missed it. Hidden in the background radiation of a dying star, encoded in patterns that looked like natural cosmic noise, was a transmission that would change the course of the war. Dr. Subin, the message began in halting, translated English. My name is Vexhai of the Nethys people. I represent others who have watched your struggle with great interest. We wish to speak. Subin stared at her instruments in disbelief. The Nethys were one of the Council's oldest subjects, conquered nearly 3,000 years ago. They served as engineers and technicians, building the infrastructure that held the Council's empire together. This could be a trap, warned Dr. Choi Min-seok when she showed him the message. Maybe, Subin agreed. But what if it's not? She composed a careful reply and sent it through the same hidden channels. Vexhai of the Nethys, humanity hears you. What do you wish to discuss? The response came within hours, and it brought news that shocked the human leadership to its core. We wish to discuss freedom, Vexhai's message read. For the first time in 3,000 years, we remember what that word means. You have shown us that the Council can bleed. We want to learn how to make them bleed more. Admiral Kang Minho convened an emergency meeting in the deep bunkers beneath what had once been Luna Station. The surviving human leadership gathered around a holographic display showing Vexhai's detailed message. According to this intelligence, reported Commander Song Hye-jin, there are active resistance movements among at least 7 Council subject species. They've been inspired by our refusal to surrender. What kind of resistance? Asked General Yoon Tae-hyung. Sabotage, mostly. The Zelhari have been contaminating terraforming projects. The morphic shapeshifters have been feeding false intelligence to their council handlers. Several species have been slowing production in critical facilities. Captain Lee Dong-yun, scarred from months of ghost ship operations, leaned forward. This could be the break we need, if the Council's own subjects turn against them. Or it could be the trap that destroys us, Minho replied. These species have been under Council control for millennia. How do we know they can be trusted? Dr. Subin had been studying the psychological profiles of Council subject species for months. Admiral, I've been analyzing their communication patterns and behavioral data. I don't think they're capable of complex deception anymore. She brought up neural scan data on the main display. Look at these brain patterns. Thousands of years of selective breeding and genetic modification have removed most of their capacity for independent thinking. When they rebel, it's almost certainly genuine. Almost certainly isn't good enough, Minho said. Then let me go, Captain Lee Dong-yun volunteered. Take a small ship, meet with them face to face. If it's a trap, you lose 1 ship and 1 crew. If it's real, we might actually have a chance to win this war. The meeting was arranged in the ruins of an ancient battlefield where the Council had destroyed a species called the Keth Mori 2,000 years ago. Captain Lee Dong-yun took his fastest ship, the Wraith, and a crew of volunteers. The rendezvous point was a dead system where broken worlds orbited a dying star. As the Wraith approached the coordinates, sensors detected multiple alien ships waiting in the shadows of a shattered planet. Captain, reported his sensor officer, I'm reading 7 different ship types. None of them match Council military profiles. Pirates? Asked his weapons officer, Major Bae Sung-min. No, Dong-yun replied, studying the tactical display. Look at the formation. They're not positioned for ambush. They're positioned for quick escape if this goes wrong. The alien ships powered down their weapons and activated communication systems. The main viewer filled with the image of a creature unlike anything in human databases. Vex High of the Nethys was tall and thin, with 4 arms and skin that seemed to shift color with emotion. Behind him stood representatives of other species, each one different but all sharing the same expression of desperate hope. Captain Dong-yun of humanity, Vex High said through a universal translator. We welcome you to this place of ancient sorrow. Here, the Keth Mori made their last stand against Council tyranny. Here they died free rather than live as slaves. You honor us with this meeting, Dong-yun replied carefully. But we must know. Why now? Why rebel after thousands of years of submission? A new figure stepped forward, a creature that seemed to be made of living water. I am flow current through stone of the Zelhari. We rebel now because you have shown us that rebellion is possible. For 3,000 years, we believed the Council was inevitable, like gravity or time. You proved that even gods can die. Another, alien, humanoid, but with features that shifted like mist, spoke next. I am Echo of Distant Thunder of the Morphic. We have served the Council as spies and infiltrators, but our reports have grown inaccurate. We tell them what they want to hear while we learn what we need to know. Dong-yun felt a chill of excitement. These weren't just rebels. They were rebels in positions of critical importance to the Council's war effort. "What do you need from humanity?" he asked. Vexhi's skin shifted to a deep blue color that his translator identified as determination. "We need to learn how to fight. Our species have forgotten the concepts of warfare, sacrifice, and coordinated resistance. We know how to sabotage and hide, but we don't know how to stand and fight. And we need to learn courage," added Flow Current Through Stone. "Your species possesses something we have lost. When faced with extinction, you choose defiance. When faced with impossible odds, you attack anyway. We need to understand how to think like you." Dr. Choi Min-suk, who had accompanied the mission as a xenopsychologist, stepped forward. "We can teach you," he said, "but you need to understand that fighting for freedom requires sacrifices. Many of you will die." "We are already dying," Echo of Distant Thunder replied. "We have been dying for thousands of years, one generation at a time, as the Council breeds the spirit out of us. At least this way, our deaths will have meaning." The alliance that formed in that dead system was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Species that had been separated by thousands of years of conquest came together with humanity as their teacher in the art of rebellion. Intelligence Officer Park Won-woo coordinated the complex logistics of cross-species resistance. Each alien race brought different capabilities to the fight. The Zelhari could manipulate planetary environments, turning entire worlds into weapons. The Morphic could infiltrate any organization, gathering intelligence and spreading disinformation. The Nethys understood Council technology better than the Council themselves, but the cultural barriers were enormous. Dr. Choi Min-seok worked with teams of psychologists to develop what they called courage protocols, methods of awakening dormant, survival instincts in species that had been bred for submission. "The fundamental problem," he explained to the Alliance leadership, "is that your species have lost the psychological framework for resistance. You understand slavery so completely that you can't imagine freedom." He worked with Vexhi to develop training programs that gradually rebuilt the mental pathways necessary for independent action. It was slow, dangerous work. Several alien volunteers suffered complete psychological breaks when forced to confront the reality of their situation, but gradually it began to work. Zelhari engineers who had spent their lives building Council facilities began designing ways to destroy them. Morphic spies who had reported truthfully for centuries learned to lie with conviction. Nethys technicians discovered that the systems they maintained could be turned into weapons with small, undetectable modifications. The first joint operation was a disaster. A combined human-alien force attempted to liberate a Council prison facility holding political prisoners from multiple species. The aliens, despite their training, still hesitated at critical moments. Their conditioning ran too deep. Major Bay. Sungmin, leading the assault team, watched in frustration as Nethys commandos froze when faced with Council guards. "They know what to do," he reported to Dong-yun via comm. "But when they see Council uniforms, their programming kicks in and they can't pull the trigger." The mission succeeded only because human forces compensated for their allies' limitations, taking casualties that could have been avoided with proper coordination. "We're asking them to overcome millions of years of evolutionary conditioning in a few months," Dr. Choi Min-seok observed afterward. "We need to be patient." But patience was a luxury the war couldn't afford. Council forces had discovered the rebellion and were conducting massive purges among their subject populations. Entire species faced extinction as the Council decided, that potential rebels were more dangerous than useful slaves. The turning point came during the liberation of the Kethtar Research Facility. A joint force of humans and aliens attempted to rescue scientists who were being forced to develop new weapons for the Council. When the operation began to fail, Vexhai made a decision that stunned everyone involved. Rather than retreat as his conditioning demanded, he led a desperate charge against Council positions, knowing it meant certain death. "For the memory of the free!" he shouted in his own language, firing weapons he had never been trained to use against masters he had served for 3,000 years. The liberation of Zirion Prime marked the moment when the impossible became inevitable. Admiral Kang Minho stood on the bridge of the newly captured Council dreadnought Eternal Dominion, watching as human and alien engineers worked side by side to understand the ship's systems. "Status report," he called to Commander Song Hee-jin, who was coordinating the technical teams. "We have full control of the ship's primary systems," she reported. "The Nethys technicians are teaching our engineers how to operate Council technology, while our tactical officers are showing them how to use it for unconventional purposes." Minho smiled grimly. The Eternal Dominion was more than just a captured warship. It was a symbol that the Council could be beaten using their own tools. More importantly, it was proof that the alliance between humans and alien rebels could achieve what neither could accomplish alone. Dr. Park Subin worked frantically in the ship's medical bay, studying the bodies of Council soldiers killed in the assault. What she discovered would change the course of the war. "Admiral," she called through the ship's communication system, "you need to see this immediately." Minho found her hunched over, a holographic display showing genetic analysis data. Her face was pale with shock and something that looked like pity. "What did you find, Doctor?" "The Council species," she began, manipulating the display to show comparative genetic structures. "They've been modifying themselves for thousands of years, removing what they considered primitive traits, such as aggression, curiosity, individual problem-solving ability, and most importantly, the psychological mechanisms that drive desperate courage." She highlighted specific genetic sequences. "Look at this. They've literally bred out the survival instincts that make humans dangerous when cornered." Dr. Choi Min-seok, who had been working with the alien rebels, joined the conversation. "That explains why our courage protocols work so slowly on the subject species. They haven't just been conditioned into submission, they've been genetically modified for it." "But there's more," Subin continued. "The modifications are getting more extreme with each generation. The youngest Council soldiers show almost no capacity for independent thought under stress. They're becoming perfectly obedient soldiers who can't adapt to changing situations." Minho studied the genetic data with growing understanding. "They've evolved themselves into an evolutionary dead end." "Exactly. They've created a military force that's perfect for conquering civilized opponents but completely helpless against chaotic enemies like us." The implications were staggering. The Council's greatest strength was also their fatal weakness. By breeding out the traits that made warfare unpredictable, they had made themselves vulnerable to any enemy that retained those traits. Captain Lee Dong-yun put this discovery to immediate use during Operation Prometheus, the massive assault on the Council's fortress system of Vorth Prime. The attack fleet included ships from 12 different species, each contributing their unique capabilities to a battle plan that no single race could have conceived. "All units, this is Prometheus. Command." Dong-hyun broadcast from the flagship New Terra. "Remember, they expect us to fight like civilized beings. Disappoint them. The human ships attacked with their characteristic unpredictability, using ramming runs and explosive decompression as weapons. The Zelhari vessels manipulated the system's asteroid belt, turning space rocks into guided missiles. The Morphic. Infiltrators had already disabled key defensive systems by impersonating Council personnel. But the real breakthrough came from the Nethys technical teams. They had discovered how to use Council shield generators in reverse, creating implosion fields that could crush enemy ships from the inside. Direct hit on the primary fortress, reported Lieutenant Shin Yuna from the New Terra's tactical station. Their shields are imploding. Structure is collapsing. The fortress that had protected Vorth Prime for 10,000 years crumbled in minutes, destroyed by its own defensive technology turned against it. General Yoon Tae-hyung coordinated simultaneous uprisings across 17 different systems, each rebellion carefully tailored to the psychology and capabilities of the local alien populations. The key was understanding that different species needed different approaches to overcome their conditioning. The aquatic Zelhari responded best to environmental challenges that triggered their survival instincts. When Council forces poisoned their water supplies, the Zelhari didn't surrender as expected. Instead, they used their bioengineering skills to turn the poison into a weapon against their oppressors. The energy-based Kethvar required a different approach. Dr. Choi Min-seok discovered that they retained racial memories of ancient freedom that could be awakened through specific electromagnetic frequencies. Once activated, these memories triggered a violent rejection of Council control. The shape-shifting Morphic were the most challenging because their conditioning was based on perfect mimicry of authority figures. The breakthrough came when human psychologists taught them to mimic the emotional states of free beings rather than just their physical forms. Engineer Oh Ji-won worked around the clock to integrate alien technology with human weapons systems. The results were devastating to Council forces who had no countermeasures for hybrid weapons that combined the best of multiple technologies. Look at this. She showed Admiral Minho a new torpedo design. Nethys guidance systems, Zelhari bioweapons, Morphic adaptive targeting, and human explosive power. It can track targets through hyperspace, adapt to any defensive system, and deliver a payload that grows stronger the more it's attacked. The weapon proved its worth during the Battle of Kepler Station. Council forces, confident in their defensive systems, watched in horror as the hybrid torpedoes passed through their shields, adapted to their countermeasures, and delivered biological agents that turned their own life support systems against them. But the real change wasn't in technology or tactics. It was in the psychology of the Allied forces. Species that had been slaves for millennia were learning to think like free beings. Major Bae Sung-min witnessed this transformation firsthand during the assault on the Council's slave-breeding facility on Sigma Draconis IV. The mission required infiltrating a heavily defended installation where the Council was attempting to create a new generation of perfectly obedient soldiers. "The charges are set," reported his Nethys demolitions expert, a being called Sharp Edge of Crystal. "But, sir, there are thousands of juveniles in the lower levels. Council young, but still children." This was the test that defined the Alliance. Would they become monsters to defeat monsters or find a better way? "Extract the children," Bae ordered without hesitation. "All of them. If we're fighting for freedom, we don't abandon the innocent." The rescue operation was costly in lives and resources, but it sent a message throughout the galaxy. The human-led Alliance wasn't seeking revenge or conquest. They were fighting for the principle that all beings deserved the chance to choose their own fate. The psychological impact on Council forces was devastating. Intercepted communications showed growing confusion and fear among their commanders. How do we fight an enemy that risks their lives to save our children? One council general asked in a message that Dr. Park Subin's intelligence team intercepted. They're not following any logical pattern, another replied. Military doctrine says they should execute prisoners and eliminate future threats. Instead, they're adopting council juveniles and trying to deprogram their conditioning. The council's response was to accelerate their atrocity campaigns, hoping to break alliance morale through increasing brutality. Instead, they discovered that humans and their allies became more dangerous when motivated by righteous anger. The turning point came when Emperor Thulvanith of the Vorthak Empire attempted to negotiate a conditional surrender. His holographic image appeared on communication screens throughout the galaxy, offering humanity a place on the Council as equals. President Kim Ji-hyo responded from the liberated world of New Geneva, standing before representatives of dozens of formerly enslaved species. Emperor Thulvanith, she began, her voice carrying across star systems. We thank you for your generous offer, but we must decline. The Emperor's crystalline features showed confusion. No species had ever refused a seat on the Council. We don't want a place at your table, Kim continued. We want to burn it down and build something better. A galaxy where every species stands as equals, where freedom is a right, not a privilege granted by self-appointed masters. Behind her, alien representatives from dozens of worlds raised their voices in agreement. The sight of former slaves standing, alongside their human liberators, speaking as equals, shattered something fundamental in the Council's worldview. You offer us the chance to become what we destroyed, Kim concluded. We choose to remain what we are, free beings who refuse to kneel. The Emperor's response was swift and violent. Council forces launched their largest offensive yet, determined to crush the rebellion before it could spread further. But they discovered that the alliance had grown beyond their ability to suppress. Every system they attacked fought back with weapons and tactics they couldn't understand. Every victory cost them more than they could afford. The galaxy held its breath as both sides prepared for the final confrontation that would determine the future of known space. At the galactic core, the Council assembled the largest fleet in the history of warfare, pulling ships from every corner of their empire for one decisive battle. Admiral Kang Min-ho stood in the command center of the Alliance flagship Eternal Freedom, a massive vessel built from captured Council technology and human engineering principles. Around him, the greatest armada ever assembled by free beings prepared for what many believed would be humanity's last battle. Fleet status, Min-ho called to his operations staff. 1,500 ships of human construction, 800 captured and converted Council vessels, and approximately 3,000 ships from allied species, reported Commander Song Hyejin. Total personnel, 2 million humans, 4 million aliens from 27 different species. And the enemy? Conservative estimate, 12,000 ships, heavily armed and shielded. They have us outnumbered 6-1. Min-ho studied the tactical displays showing the enemy formations. The Council fleet was perfectly organized, each ship in its assigned position according to 40,000 years of military doctrine. It was beautiful, efficient, and utterly predictable. They still don't understand, he murmured to himself. Dr. Park Subin had spent weeks analyzing captured Council battle plans and psychological profiles. Her final report had revealed the enemy's ultimate weakness. They had become so dependent on their hierarchical structure that removing their leadership would cause complete systemic collapse. "Admiral," she reported via communication link from the research vessel Pandora, "I've identified 17 critical command nodes in their fleet structure. These ships contain the senior commanders who coordinate everything. If we can eliminate them, their entire fleet becomes a mob without direction," Minho finished. "How heavily defended are these command ships?" "Each one is surrounded by at least 50 escort vessels and protected by shields that could withstand a supernova. Direct assault would be suicide." "Then we won't assault them directly." Captain Lee Dong-hyun led the most dangerous mission in human history aboard the stealth ship Wraith of Freedom. His objective was simple in theory but impossible in execution: penetrate the heart of the Council fleet and cripple their command structure. "Stealth systems engaged," reported his navigation officer, Lieutenant Park Won-woo. "We're running silent and dark." The Wraith of Freedom was invisible to most sensors, built using a combination of human stealth technology and morphic shape-shifting principles. To enemy scanners, it appeared to be a piece of space debris drifting through the battlefield. "Contact. Bearing 270, reported sensors. "Council command ship, Throne of Eternity. Flagship of Emperor Thulvaneth himself." "Perfect," Dong-hyun smiled grimly. "Take us in closer." As they approached the massive Council flagship, Dong-hyun's crew prepared for a mission that violated every principle of civilized warfare. They were going to board the enemy command ship and fight their way to its control center using nothing but portable weapons and explosive charges. "Captain," Major Bae Sungmin reported from the assault bay. "Boarding. Teams are ready. 40 humans, 20 Nethys technical specialists, and 10 morphic infiltrators. Remember the mission parameters," Dong-hyun addressed his crew. "We're not trying to capture the ship. We're trying to cause maximum chaos in minimum time. Get in, disrupt their command structure, and get out." The boarding operation began when the Wraith of Freedom used its stealth systems to dock with the Council flagship's service bay. To the enemy crew, it looked like a routine supply delivery. By the time they realized their mistake, human Marines were already fighting through the ship's corridors. Lieutenant Commander Shin Yuna led her squad through the ship's central command sections, using weapons that combined human explosives with Nethys technical precision. Every door they breached, every system they destroyed, sent shockwaves through the Council's rigid command hierarchy. "Deck 7 secured," she reported into her comm unit while firing at crystalline Council guards. "Their command staff doesn't know how to react to close combat. They keep trying to maintain formation instead of fighting." The psychological impact of humans fighting inside their flagship was devastating to Council morale. For 40,000 years, their ships had been inviolate sanctuaries where senior commanders coordinated battles from perfect safety. The idea of enemy soldiers in their corridors triggered responses their training had never prepared them for. Commander Song Hye-jin monitored Council communications from the Eternal Freedom, watching as their military coordination began to collapse. "Admiral," she reported with growing excitement, "their command network is fragmenting. Ship commanders are requesting orders, but the flagship can't respond coherently." Status on the boarding operation? Captain Dong-hyun's teams have reached the primary control center. They're downloading the entire Council tactical database, while Major Bae's demolition teams plant charges throughout the ship's critical systems. The climax of the operation came when Dong-hyun's force reached the Council's main command chamber. Emperor Thulvaneth stood before a massive holographic display, his crystalline body pulsing with colors that indicated extreme agitation. "Humans," the Emperor said through his translator, his voice carrying harmonics of disbelief. "You dare to board the Throne of Eternity itself?" "We dare many things," Dong-yun replied, his weapon trained on the alien leader. "That's what makes us dangerous." Dr. Choi Min-seok stepped forward, his psychological analysis equipment scanning the Emperor's emotional state. "Emperor Thulvanith, you offered humanity a place on your council. Now we offer you a choice." "What choice?" "Surrender unconditionally and abdicate your authority over all subject species, or watch your entire civilization collapse around you." The Emperor's crystalline features shifted through patterns that indicated confusion and growing fear. "You cannot be serious. You are a primitive species with less than 1% of our fleet strength. And yet," Choi replied calmly, "we're here in your command center while your forces scatter in confusion. Your psychological profiles show that Council species have no capacity for independent action under stress. Remove the command structure, and your entire military becomes helpless." To demonstrate the point, Bai Sungmin activated the first set of charges. Explosions rippled through the flagship's infrastructure, knocking out primary systems and sending the massive vessel spinning out of control. Throughout the Council fleet, ship commanders who had relied on constant direction from higher authority suddenly found themselves unable to make basic tactical decisions. Some ships simply stopped moving, their crews paralyzed by the absence of orders. Others began firing randomly, attacking friend and foe alike in their confusion. "This is impossible," Thulvanith said, watching his perfect fleet dissolve into chaos. "Military science proves that superior numbers and technology must prevail." "Military science assumes rational opponents," Admiral Minho's voice came through. The communication system as the Alliance fleet began its attack. "You've forgotten that war is ultimately about will, not just weapons. The Battle of the Galactic Core became the largest space engagement in recorded history. Alliance forces, outnumbered 6-1, used tactics that no civilized species would consider. Human ships rammed Council vessels, detonating their reactors to take out multiple targets. Zelhari bioships released toxic spores that turned enemy life support systems into death traps. Morphic infiltrators caused friendly fire incidents by impersonating Council officers and giving contradictory orders. But the real battle was psychological. For the first time in their history, the Council faced an enemy that fought harder when outnumbered, that became more dangerous when wounded, and that refused to acknowledge the possibility of defeat. Engineer Oh Ji-won coordinated the technical aspects of the assault from the engineering decks of the Eternal Freedom. Her teams had developed weapons specifically designed to exploit Council weaknesses. "Firing quantum resonance torpedoes," she reported as her weapons found their targets. "Their shields are designed to repel energy and matter, but not quantum, fluctuations that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The exotic weapons pass through Council defenses like they didn't exist, striking at the fundamental structure of enemy ships and causing them to phase partially out of normal space." As the battle raged, Dr. Park Subin made a final breakthrough in her analysis of Council psychology. "Admiral," she broadcast from the research vessel, "I've identified the critical failure point. Their entire species structure is based on absolute hierarchy. If the Emperor publicly surrenders, every Council ship will be psychologically compelled to obey. Then we need to make him surrender publicly." In the chaos of the flagship's command center, Emperor Thulvanith faced the complete collapse of everything his civilization had built. His perfect fleet was scattering in defeat, his authority was crumbling, and the species he had ruled for millennia were beginning to think for themselves. 1 year after the surrender at the Galactic Core, President Kim Ji-hyo stood in what had once been the Council's supreme chamber on the planet Vorth Prime. The crystalline throne where Emperor Thulvaneth had ruled 47 species for millennia had been removed, replaced by a simple circular table where representatives from dozens of worlds could meet as equals. Today marks the formal dissolution of the Galactic Council, Kim announced to the assembled delegates. No single species will ever again hold dominion over others. The age of empires is over. Around the table sat beings that had never before spoken as free creatures. Zelhari representatives who had spent 3,000 years terraforming worlds for their masters now planned which systems their own people would colonize. Nethys technicians who had built the infrastructure of oppression were designing communication networks that would connect free worlds across the galaxy. Admiral Kong Minho watched from the observation gallery, his weathered face showing the weight of the year's reconstruction efforts. The task of transforming a galaxy built on slavery into a civilization of free beings had proven almost as difficult as winning the war. Admiral, Dr. Park Subin approached him with her latest report. The psychological rehabilitation programs are showing remarkable progress. Former Council species are developing individual decision-making capabilities much faster than we predicted. Any problems? The usual challenges. Some species are struggling with the concept of democracy. Others are having difficulty adjusting to economic systems that don't involve forced labor. But overall, the progress is encouraging. The transformation had not been easy. Entire species had to learn how to govern themselves after millennia of being told what to do. Economic systems collapsed when slave labor disappeared overnight. Some worlds descended into chaos as former subjects tried to understand concepts like voting, individual rights, and personal responsibility. Dr. Choi Min-seok had established rehabilitation centers throughout the galaxy where former council species could learn the psychological skills necessary for free beings. The process was slow and sometimes painful, but the results were remarkable. Look at these neural scans, he showed Subin on his portable display. This is a Vorthak citizen who went through our freedom conditioning program. Notice how the areas responsible for creative thinking and independent problem solving have actually grown larger. Their brains are physically adapting? Exactly. Given the opportunity, these species are recovering capabilities their ancestors possessed before the Council's genetic modifications. We're not just teaching them to be free, we're helping them remember what freedom feels like. Captain Lee Dong-hyun commanded the new exploration service, leading mixed-species crews on missions to discover what lay beyond the old Council territories. The galaxy was much larger than anyone had imagined, filled with civilizations that had hidden from Council. Expansion for thousands of years. Captain's log, stardate 2387.156, he recorded from the bridge of the starship Pioneer. We've made contact with the Azarian Collective, a group of species that avoided Council detection by masking their energy signatures. They've agreed to join the Galactic Federation under the condition that their independence is guaranteed. His crew was a perfect example of the new galaxy. Human navigation officers worked alongside Nethys engineers and Zelhari biologists. Former enemies had become trusted colleagues, united by their shared commitment to exploration and discovery. Lieutenant Commander Shin Yuna, now serving as his first officer, brought him the latest intelligence reports. Captain, we're receiving signals from the Outer Rim that suggest there are at least 30 more civilizations that have been hiding from the Council. Some of them have technology we've never seen before. Any hostility? None so far. Most of them seem curious about the Federation, A few are asking for protection from what they call the old powers, species that were council allies rather than subjects. That was one of the ongoing challenges. Not every alien civilization had opposed the council. Some species had served as willing partners in oppression, and they were struggling to find their place in a galaxy that now valued freedom above order. General Yoon Tae-hyung had transitioned from military commander to head of the new peacekeeping force, an organization dedicated to preventing any single species from dominating others. His forces included volunteers from every free world, trained in defensive tactics rather than conquest. The former council worlds are the biggest challenge, he reported to President Kim during their monthly security briefing. Some of them still believe in hierarchical rule and keep trying to establish dominance over their neighbors. Any major incidents? Nothing we couldn't handle. The Kethvar Energy Collective attempted to claim sovereignty over 3 star systems last month. But when our peacekeepers arrived, they backed down. They're still learning that the Federation won't tolerate expansionist behavior. Engineer O. Jiwon had perhaps the most challenging job of all, dismantling the technological systems that had supported 40,000 years of oppression while building new infrastructure for a free galaxy. Her teams worked across hundreds of worlds, converting weapon factories into manufacturing centers and surveillance networks into communication systems. The irony, she explained to her staff during a project meeting, is that council technology is incredibly advanced. We just need to reprogram it for construction instead of destruction. Her latest project was ambitious even by post-war standards, a galaxy-spanning communication network that would allow instant contact between any 2 points in known space. Unlike the Council's version, which had been used for command and control, the new network would be open to all species and impossible for any single group to dominate. The key, she explained to the engineering team, is decentralization. Every world contributes nodes to the network, but no single world can control more than a tiny fraction of the total system. The social changes were as dramatic as the technological ones. On Earth, children learned about the war in history classes, but they also learned alongside alien exchange students whose ancestors had been enemies just a few years earlier. Commander. Song Hyejin had established the first interspecies university on New Geneva, where young beings from dozens of worlds studied together. The cultural exchange was producing innovations that no single species could have achieved alone. Professor Kim, a young Nethys student, approached her after a lecture on comparative government. Why did humans choose democracy when monarchy would have been more efficient for ruling the galaxy? Because, Song replied, efficiency isn't the most important thing. Freedom is. Sometimes the messy, complicated way is better than the simple, orderly way. The question reflected one of the fundamental challenges of the new era. Many species still struggled to understand why humans had fought so hard for freedom when order was so much more comfortable. But gradually, the galaxy was learning. Former slaves discovered the joy of making their own choices, even when those choices led to mistakes. Species that had followed orders for millennia began to develop art, literature, and music that expressed their unique perspectives. The anniversary celebration on Vorth Prime was interrupted by urgent news from the Outer Rim. Captain Lee Dong-yun's exploration fleet had discovered something that would change everything once again. Mr. President, Dong-yun's image appeared on the chamber's main screen. We found them, the ancients, the species that created the council in the first place. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled delegates. For decades, historians had wondered about the origins of the council's rigid hierarchy. Now they had their answer. They call themselves the hegemony, Dongyun continued. They've been watching the galaxy from outside our local cluster, waiting to see if their council experiment would succeed. Our revolution has gotten their attention. Are they hostile? President Kim asked. Unknown. They've requested a meeting with Federation leadership. They say they want to discuss the next phase of galactic evolution. Admiral Minho felt a familiar chill. Humanity had just finished freeing the galaxy from one set of overlords, only to discover that there might be an even more powerful force watching from the shadows. How many ships? He asked. We can't get accurate readings, Admiral. Their technology is beyond anything we've encountered, but based on energy signatures, thousands, maybe tens of thousands. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The war that had freed the galaxy might have been just the opening move in a much larger game. But Dr. Park Subin stood up from her seat, her expression determined. Mr. President, I recommend we accept their meeting request. Doctor, we've learned something important over the past year. Freedom isn't a destination, it's a process. Every generation has to choose it again. If there are more challenges ahead, we'll face them the same way we face the Council. Together, added the Zelhari representative, speaking for the first time in the session. As equals, said the Nethys delegate. Without surrender, concluded the Morphic ambassador.